Hello to my seasonal readers. Today I'm going to be sharing a decently large winter recommendations video. I have all sorts of genres in here, and I definitely wouldn't recommend reading all of these books in one year, but in my opinion, these are all great books to be read in winter for one reason or another. A lot of them are set in winter. Some of them, I just read them in winter for the first time, so while there may not be any like actual winter elements in the story, to me they feel like winter books. I am going to be starting out with some Christmas recommendations. I often get asked to do a Christmas recommendations video for BOOKMAS, and you guys, I don't read very many Christmas books. I did not have enough here to make its own video. I've shared a few videos in the past, so I'll share what I have. We're gonna do Christmas, then I have a bunch of classics, some fantasy, some mystery and suspense, some historical fiction, middle grade, and then we're gonna end on poetry. I don't know why we're ending on poetry. That's just the way my list is written. And while we go through this list, I'm going to slowly be drinking my peppermint hot cocoa. Just a perfect winter drink. Also, if you guys want some recommendations for winter that are not book things, but like a winter bucket list, I shared a video over on my vlog channel sharing a little bit about my personal winter bucket list and some great ideas, hopefully for you guys as well. So if you're interested, I'll leave that linked below as well. Now, let's get into the Christmas books. Some of these are definitely no-brainers, but I want to mention them in case that you've never read them. No shame if you haven't, but you should. I feel like the most obvious is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is one of his shortest works, so if you felt intimidated by Dickens before, this is the place to start, in my opinion. So we've got the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. I don't feel like this book needs much of an introduction. After you read the book, go watch the Mickey Mouse version, whatever the Disney version is, I'm totally blanking, where Donald is Scrooge. I feel like they did a really good job with the story, so definitely need to read A Christmas Carol. One that I read, I think 2 years ago, this was a gift from Charlene, is Letters from Father Christmas by Tolkien. These are copies of letters that he wrote to his kids from Father Christmas, and there are some like illustrations throughout, and then he uses the same characters. Like there's like a polar bear that's used each year that writes some like little notes in here as well. And I just love how he didn't keep his creativity to himself. He shared it with his kids as well, and this goes over many years. Thankfully, there's also like a translation on the side because Father Christmas's handwriting is a little bit hard to read. I definitely recommend reading this book. It's a much more also approachable way to read Tolkien. Let's kind of stick with the Christmas classics. I have two from L.M. Montgomery. I have Christmas with L.M. Montgomery, and I have Christmas with Anne and Other Holiday Stories. I honestly don't know if there's overlap in these stories. Okay, there's one, two, oh, nope, they're all in this one. So if you need to pick, see if you can get your hands on this one, though this one is really hard to find. Christmas with Anne has 16 stories. This also has New Year's, but mostly Christmas stories. Sweet little moments with L.M. Montgomery, and Anne is in some of them and not in others. And it's an easy way to like dip in and out of some Maud over Christmas. A book I got last year, my mom gave it to me before Christmas, is Emmanuel by Ruth Chow Simmons. So this is Advent devotionals, 25 days for Advent with like these beautiful watercolor illustrations throughout. Definitely recommend if you're looking for an Advent devotional. Christmas Day illustrations, beautiful, and the whole cover is just gorgeous. Love it. A book that I read, I think maybe my first Christmas on YouTube or shortly after, and I've been recommending it ever since, is Catching Christmas by Terry Blackstock. So this is not a normal Terry Blackstock suspense story. This is a kind of like romantic comedy. If you had Luke from Gilmore Girls, that like kind of curmudgeon-y guy, meeting a lawyer, or she's a lawyer, some kind of assistant, first year law associate, that's what she is. And then you've got an old lady that keeps calling the grumpy man who's a taxi driver to bring her to the hospital. Really, really sweet Christmas story. I've enjoyed this one a lot. This is one of the books that I've probably reread the most in the last few years because I like to read it almost every Christmas. Then I've got 2 books by Shatona to recommend. The first one is Heart of Noel. This is one of her bookstrings books. This is a novella, or a Noella as she says here. So this is, we've got bookstore vibes, we've got a guy that's trying to help a bookstore get out of the red, and it's Christmas set in the ever Christmas town or city of Noel. I always enjoy Shatona's deep themes, but also her humor. And then another one of hers that I've really enjoyed is Tarnished Silver. So this one is a bakery owner, and she has been hiding a major secret for, I think it's like 25 years or something, and her cleaner comes across bits of the secret, and yeah, things kind of start to blow up. I don't want to say too much. Really enjoyed that one. I could go for a reread of that one as well. And then Gideon's Gift by Karen Kingsbury, there we go, I was blanking, is another good one. It's, I don't want to say too much. She's got this 4-book series. Gideon's Gift is definitely the best. I don't remember how it starts, but it's also pretty deep for such a short little book. Now let's go on to classics. Some of these are wintry, like I said, and some of them are just, I don't know, make me think of winter. The first one on my stack here is A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I love the 1993-ish movie, and there's a lot of like cold elements in that which make me think of winter when I think of this book. So we've got Sarah Crew, who starts out as a rich girl, but then her dad dies and she loses all her money, and the boarding school that she's a part of, they take her from being like the most popular girl to being the servant that no one's allowed to talk to. And Sarah is just such a great example of excellent character throughout the whole book. I've got North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I first read this in the winter, and therefore it feels like winter vibes. We follow a young woman who moves with her parents from, it was like from a beautiful countryside to a industrial city, I think. And this is one of the few classics, like, I mean, it is small, but it's pretty thick. It's one of the few that I flew through and was picking up over other newer books, and it never felt like I was really reading a classic. I never felt like I had to push myself, so that's always high praise. A classic that I would say is good to start at Christmas time is Little Women. We start out right at the beginning of Christmas. They're trying to figure out Christmas gifts for each other and for their mother, these 4 sisters, and it obviously covers a longer period of time, especially sometimes Little Women is just Little Women, and sometimes Little Women is Little Women and Good Wives. I think they are both one. I think when I think of Little Women, I think both stories because that's how I've read it. But if you have a shorter version of Little Women, just know that that might actually only be half the story. I think, I don't remember, I think maybe in the UK it's published generally as 1, and often in the States it was published as 2 back when it first came out. But yeah, you definitely want to read the whole thing. Okay, I've got Jane Eyre. I kind of feel hesitant to put this on here because I did not love this book. But it is one that I really want to reread, and it does have a decent amount of it set in winter, so I'm putting it on here. I know there's some major Jane Eyre lovers out there. I'm curious to see if I become one on my reread because I'm not 100% one right now. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Always kind of flip between, is this an autumn book or is this a winter book? Because my edition is white, it feels wintry to me, but I feel like it could also be an autumn book. This book, the whole time that we're reading it, we never find out our narrator, like her name. Rebecca is pretty much the main character, and she's never in the book. It's an interesting thing that Daphne du Maurier has done. This is another book I would like to reread soon because I didn't love it when I was reading it. But afterwards, like, this is a book that I think about so often. So we've got a woman, unknown name, who marries this man, and she always feels like she's living in the shadow of his previous wife, Rebecca. And the story's a lot about Rebecca. And I would be so curious reading it again, how that would change my reading experience. I can't leave off Agatha Christie. We need some midwinter murder in the middle of all these classics. This is a collection of short stories. I'm not sure how many. All set around winter time. A lot of Christmas ones, a lot of New Year's ones, probably about 12 of them. All very winter themed. There is a nicer cover of an edition out there now that I wish I had, but this is the edition that I have. And then of course I have to mention The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I flip-flopped between putting this on the Christmas list or the classics list or the middle grade list. It can be in any of them, but we've got 4 siblings that stumble into a wardrobe at their like great uncle's house or whoever he is, and they stumble across this other world in the wardrobe called Narnia, where it is always winter and never Christmas. C.S. Lewis is really brilliant. Like, to be able to put everything that he put into such a small book, I love that. Okay, let's do fantasy next. I have been waiting to put this on a winter recommendation video ever since I read it in the spring, I think it was. The Light Between Worlds by Laura E. Weymouth. This book I raved about so much after I read it. It has Narnia vibes. So how the book starts is we have 3 siblings, I think, who are in the middle of World War II, and they're like going to a bomb shelter, I think, and they disappear into this fantasy world where they live 6 years of their lives and then come back to like being in that bomb shelter. So our main character for the first half of the book is 16, I think, and she is struggling with the fact that they've been back to the real world for years, but she always felt more at home in the other world, and she's had a hard time coming back. And like, she aged 6 years while they were in this world, but now she came back as like whatever, a 10-year-old or whatever she was, and she's struggling a lot with depression. This book is such a good look at mental health. I've never read it done so well before. Definitely recommend it. And then I think this one has some winter in it. For some reason it feels like a winter book to me. That is Mark of the Raven by Morgan L. Bussey. This is the start of the Ravenwood Chronicles trilogy, Ravenwood Saga trilogy. And we've got Lady Selene, who is heir to the House of Ravenwood, which her family, historically the women in her family have always been dream walkers, which means they have a lot of power, except for the last unknown amount of years. Instead of using their power for good, her family has been assassins for hire, and they've been killing people in their sleep. And Lady Selene isn't such a big fan of that. And so this is her story. A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking is also another really great winter. It's got like baking. We've got a wizard apprentice who stumbles across a dead body. So we've got a little bit like mystery suspense, but ultimately it is a fantasy story because our main character is a minor wizard. So she has this power to, her power is all in regards to baking. She can make sure that bread doesn't burn. She can make it rise properly. She can make things not go stale. She can make little gingerbread guys dance for a short little period of time. But right at the beginning of the book, she comes across this dead body in her aunt's or whoever's bakery she's working for, and she realizes that there's someone out there murdering minor wizards, of which she is one. And so she goes into hiding and tries to figure out what's going on. It's interesting because our main character is 14. She is so young. You feel like it should be a middle grade book, but it's not. It's definitely not that there's like mature themes, but it just is pretty dark, that I wouldn't put it into the hands of a younger middle grader. I would say it's like more YA. Okay, let's move into mystery and suspense. One that I've only read one story out of so far, but it's on my list to finish this winter, is Cold Escape. So like I said, there's 5 novels and they're by different authors. So I've read Shatona's book, which definitely had snowy winter vibes, and at the time we weren't into snowy winter yet, so I wasn't ready to read the rest of them, but I loved her story, as I usually do, and so I want to read the other ones because I think they all have winter vibes. In her story, this young woman is on the run because her aunt has been murdered and the people are after her. That's all I'll say. Not If I Save You First. This is a YA thriller where this girl's dad used to work kind of like, I think he was security for the president, and something happened and they're kind of been in hiding for a number of years, and now people are out to get her. And it's set in Alaska. It's very snowy, definitely cold vibes. And then I gotta throw in a few winter cult books too, because apparently I have a few of those. The first one I will mention is Lay Your Body Down. I'm pretty sure this one ends in winter. Yeah, it does. So this one, our main character's boyfriend from a long time ago has died. She goes home for the funeral and she feels like he was maybe murdered, and his parents think that he was murdered. His parents did not go to the same church as her and her ex-boyfriend, but they think something fishy is going on there. And like I said, it's got some cult vibes. Very well done. Really enjoyed it. My other one is The Line Between by Tosca Lee. So this has cult vibes and pandemic vibes. And it was written before the pandemic, but I read it during that time, so it was very atmospheric. This one, so we've got Winter, which also is just the perfect name for this book. She gets kicked out of the cult right at the beginning, and all of a sudden there is a virus that is spreading rapidly, and then all of a sudden her sister, who is I think still a member of this cult, shows up and gives her a bunch of medical samples, and then all of a sudden Winter starts to be targeted, so she has to go on the run. There's a lot going on in this book, but I really enjoyed it. I feel like winter historical fiction could be its own video, but I have 3 I want to share. The first one is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I think this book actually takes place over a long period of time, but I remember when they were cold and hungry, so it feels like a winter book to me. It is written in letters. It's set on the island of Guernsey during World War II, and they were occupied, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff that happens, and I am always impressed when people can tell a really good story through letters, because there's so much you can't show. Yeah, and so one of the members of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society writes to someone in London asking for a book, and it starts this correspondence and lots of stuff happens. If you have not read this one yet, please do. 2 more are Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This one, our main character and her family are sent to, Siberia. So all the cold vibes. Definitely, read this book with a heated blanket or a hot drink or something. It's very intense, as Ruta Sepetys' books are. She always shows a different side of war or different events that I've maybe heard of before, but like Siberian concentration camp or what kind of camp was it? Some kind of work camp. Anyway, not something I've ever read about before, so I appreciate that. And then she always just does such a great job sharing humor and light, but also the darkness and the heaviness. That is one of my favorites by her. And then The Book Thief. I feel like probably by this point most people have read The Book Thief, or watched the movie, and I think they did a really good job with the movie. What I find unique about The Book Thief is the book is narrated by Death, which is interesting and well done, and I would recommend listening to the audiobook if you have access to it, because I think quite a bit of it, not like quite a bit of it was in German, but it's easier to hear it than to try to read it if you don't know German. Okay, I only have 2 for middle grade. I've got A Place to Hang the Moon, which is really good to read at Christmas time because part of it is set during Christmas, and there's a lot of hot cocoa and libraries, and we've got 3 kids that are sent into the country from London during World War II, and they are also just trying to look for a family. They don't tell people this, but their grandmother has just died and they have no family left, and their grandmother left them a bunch of money, but also they don't want to tell people that. So they are trying to find a home while also trying to survive World War II. And there's lots of library trips and great book recommendations in here. Another middle grade is Winter House by Ben Guterson. This is a trilogy about a girl named that's not her name, Elizabeth. She's kind of like Matilda-esque. She lives with her aunt and uncle, and they seem like Matilda's parents. They don't care about her. They don't care about what she does. Elizabeth likes to keep lists, and at the beginning of the book, she is invited to go to Winter House for Christmas break. And she goes and she meets a friend named Freddie, who is adorable, and she learns some of the mysteries that are in Winter House. I don't want to give too much away, but the first 2 are set at Christmas, so she goes 2 years in a row, and then the third one I think is set at Easter. Very, very good atmospheric winter vibe books. And then I'm gonna kind of fly through the poetry. These are all classic poems, so you can find them for free online. And it just turns out that some of my favorite poets have written really great winter poems. So we've got Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost, Dust of Snow, also by Robert Frost, In the Bleak Midwinter by Christina Rossetti, Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. That one's not really wintry, but I was thinking like death, winter, those go together. Spellbound by Emily Bronte, and A Winter Blue Jay by Sarah Teasdale. I will have all the books and the poems and everything that I've talked about today all listed down below. And if I can, I'll even give you links to the poems where you can read them for free online. So that is my list of exceptional winter reading. A great mix, I think, of classics and contemporary books and different genres. If you guys have some books that you think are just perfect for the winter season, please let me know in the comments because I'll be looking for more throughout the winter. I'm excited about the winter reading, and I hope you are too.